FarmCon has come and gone, and we are now left with a little bit of FarmCon High. Some really good info was shared with us just prior to FarmCon with our first in-game looks at the new North American map, Riverbend Springs. More was learned at FarmCon about the map, overall gameplay enhancements, and info about changes to the updated Giants game engine. In this video, I want to break down what we know about Riverbend Springs. I'm going to be using information from various sources, including the FarmCon presentation images and videos, the pre-FarmCon video, the FS25 release announcement, as well as interviews of Giant Software staff by content creators at the event. The end result will be the most comprehensive breakdown of Riverbend Springs you are likely to see anywhere. By all means, share this video with everyone you know that plays Farm Sim, and yes, I know it's long, but trust me, it is going to be well worth it. It was during the FarmCon presentation that we got our first look at the full PDA for Riverbend Springs, as well as a glance at the new menu interface for Farm Sim 25. On the left, we see about 16 crops listed. Nothing new here other than rice and long grain rice, which are listed just below the potato icon, but we already knew that. From the slider, it looks about 1/3 of the crop list is not displayed, and that also holds correct with respect to what we saw from the Collector's Edition, where we could count 25 entries in the crop counter on the poster. With the 2 types of rice and spinach, that puts us at 23 crops. Assuming that we also have the premium crops, it leaves us with 2 additional crops yet to be announced. If there was ever a time I wish Giants would provide me with a 4K version of their images, well, now that would be the time, because if we zoom way in on the PDA, there's some very interesting things. The icons are very familiar, and I can make out what seems to be 3 distinct farmhouse icons on the map. Could we have 3 different possible player farms to pick from? The first farm is just south of the western town or residential area. I'm calling it a town because of the grid nature of the roads. And here we can see some vehicles also parked, a bee icon, some fill icons, probably for a silo and maybe water by the road, cow icon possibly, and fuel with the farmhouse. This is possibly Sunset Sunflower Farm. Seriously, that's a tongue twister right there. Any rate, we can see a photo of that here that was also at the end of that map presentation. What's up with the flower cart? Could flowers be one of the 2 remaining crops unannounced? Maybe a flower greenhouse? Another farm is more central to the map, below the big bend in the river and just north of the trail through the woods. And then finally, the 3rd farmhouse icon is to the north above the bend. Now let's explore the map in a clockwise direction from this last farmhouse. Just to the east, we can pick up some icons. We have what looks like a sell point icon. We can tell that because it is an arrow pointing down to a flat line. We have a fill point icon, or a buy icon, where you buy product. We know that because it is an arrow pointing down between 2 vertical lines and a horizontal line, as if it is filling up a cup or a container. And above that, we have what looks an awful lot like a production icon from Farm Sim 22. I'm going to go with this either being a production or one of the new construction missions. There's another one of these icons further west past what I think is Field 34, out in the middle of what seems to be nothing. Going south from there along the extreme east, we have a sell point along a smaller stream. And then further south along the same stream, we have another production or construction area. We're going to see later on in the video, I think this is a large brick structure that has a water wheel kind of in the middle of the building. Kind of makes sense with the river running right through the building after all. Further south yet, along the main river, we see a sell point that also looks like it has a large boat-looking structure. Could this be it? We've got a large riverboat-looking thing, and I get a feeling it's more of a permanent building than a boat. And we also see a bridge in the background, which matches up pretty good with this PDA image. To the east, we also have a sell point, train silo, transfer station, an off-the-map train sell point marker, and on the other side of the river, another construction or production icon. We will show this area off in more detail later on in the video, as I have matched it up with nearly 100% confidence to a video that was released at FarmCon. Now, running down along the southern edge of the map, there are another 2 construction or production icons. That's 6 so far by my count. Moving north, up into the land bulge that results from the turn in the river, there is a 7th production or construction icon just southeast of the second farm I talked about earlier. I'm going to demonstrate later on in the video. I believe this is the sawmill that is here on Riverbend Springs. North of the second farm, there is a lot going on. In fact, I believe this is the main town that is going to be shown off in a video again later on. We have a second train silo with a rent train icon, as well as a production icon. To the west, we have another production icon. We're up to 9 by my count, a sell point, and 2 fill point triggers. This is going to be our animal dealer. North of that, we have a fuel station and what I believe is going to be our vehicle dealership. Across the other side of the railroad tracks to the north, we have another construction or production icon. Coming around to the right, we have an icon I really can't figure out exactly what it is. It looks an awful lot like a rent train icon, but I can't imagine that we're going to have 2 rent train icons that close together. We then also have 2 sell point icons, and then lastly, a final icon which once again has me a little stumped. Now, in the extreme southwest corner of the map, we have 2 sell point icons. I'm going to show you later. I believe this is where we're going to be able to deliver goods and possibly see playground equipment or other wooden things be built. North of this area, we see just south of the river a fill and sell point icon. And then north of the river, we see another fill point and production icon. That's 11 so far by my count. And then to the right, I think that is where we have our ferry crossing. I'll explain that a little bit later as well. Further north in what I'm calling the town area, we have another 2 production icons and another icon showing us the off-map train sell point. And then finally north, we have a fill icon and 2 more sell point icons, one of which I think is this. More on that later. Now that is one busy PDA. I count 13 production icons, approximately 12 sell point icons, several fill point icons, 3 farmhouses, so potentially 3 playable farms. Now let's go and take a look at some of the screenshots and videos provided by Giants. Seemingly a fairly simple image, but what I like about this one is we can see the reflectivity of the water while at the same time seeing the transparency of it. This is likely the same area just from a different angle, now looking towards where the stream flows into the river. The fast-flowing water is back from Silver Run Forest, as well as a variety of plant life along the water's edge. There will be a barge on the map, and given that we saw train cell icons at the edges of the map on the train line, but no such icons at the edge of the map along the river, I'm going to venture a guess that this will be an animated barge moving along the river, but not something that we can load and sell by moving it off the edge of the map. Life along the river will clearly be a predominant aspect of this map. Now this is where I think it is on the PDA, just south of what I'm calling the starting farm. There's been some concern that forestry wouldn't be coming back because it's not yet been mentioned. Well, it has been mentioned because it was talked about in the pre-FarmCon show, and then also by this image, I got a pretty good idea we're going to see forestry because we have kind of a log pond, a little boat, and then a sawmill off in the distance. I think this is the area here on the PDA given a few hints. We have in the image a train bridge, so it has to be along a dark line. The bridge is also there, so it also has to be along water. And overall, the layout of the buildings somewhat match the PDA layout here. Now, it's possible we might have to raise and lower these gates in order to bring water further inland, facilitating creating flooded fields easier. The way it's been described with respect to the process of creating a flooded field is that it's going to be similar to how we draw fences, place grapes and olives now. We will use a tool to draw out the corners of the area we wish to make into a flooded field with a landscaping tool. The ground will then be flattened if it's not already flat, and the interior of the field will sink slightly to allow for it to hold water. In this video, it shows a pipe adjacent to a rice field pouring water into the space. This might come as a result of drawing out the field, or it might need to be placed in some radius to a water source. We know from the pre-FarmerCon video that we'll be able to drive a ferry and take it across the river. In this shot though, we see one of those little boats again that we had over at the sawmill. I wonder if they are static, or since we can drive the ferry, maybe we can drive boats up and down the waterways as well. Will this ferry be like a train and run on a spline just between 2 points? Only time will tell. Now here we have the building I mentioned earlier that was straddling the waterway. This is going to be a production point because we can see the wrench icon. Could this be the flour mill, or maybe some other production that requires water power? We can see the water wheel in this shot, and we have a much better shot of the water wheel here. There's at least one other large structure on the map that is water powered, or at least used to be water powered. This one though is a wooden sided structure, and that's why I feel it's different from the other one that we just took a look at, because that one had a brick exterior. The textures shown on this map at this point have been extremely well done. Remember when we had the comically large grass blades on Ravenport? Hints of Ravenport come in with the lack of wires on the utility poles in this image, but I hope it's just because the game is still in production, and thus the map itself is also still in development, and not a sign of what the final product will be. Everyone seems to agree that the crop in this field is our new spinach crop. When asked if there was going to be special equipment to harvest this crop, Giant staff suddenly went quiet. So yep, it's confirmed. We will have special machinery to harvest spinach. We all know it's not always about what you say. Sometimes it's about what is not said. The first few times I saw this silo, I thought it looked nice, but really, I didn't really think too much about it. But now, thinking about that sign that we saw earlier, could this be a part of the Sunset Sunflower Farm? I have to wonder if this structure on that farm is maybe the backside of a silo complex related to the cow barn. We've got three really great images of forest and streams. We've got God rays coming through with varied terrain, varied foliage, and ground clutter. And then we have a walking or riding path, but not only for horses, but dirt bikes, because it was basically confirmed in the pre-FarmerCon video. Thanks, Kermit. There are some really nice changes with respect to the animal dealer coming on Riverbend Springs. One thing we all noticed was that Kermit pointed out during the pre-FarmerCon video is that for the first time, Giants will have animated animals at the dealer, so it's not just a giant lifeless area. What I'm hoping for is that we'll also have to take our trailer to the specific animal pen at the dealer to buy and sell a given animal. Now that's just my hopes and dreams, not a confirmation. In this shot, we see cows, sheep, and horses, and then in the next video clip, we're going to see pigs up front as well. From a blog post announcing FS25, we know that we'll get buffalo, most likely the Asian water buffalo, as well as other animals in addition to cows, sheep, pigs, chicken, and horses. So just like crops where we can expect 2 more crops to be announced, there's also some more animals that are likely going to be announced. Now, Giants made the comment during the pre-FarmerCon video about the farmer's market having an interior, and then also referenced interactive shelves during the actual FarmerCon video. In an interview after that presentation, lead map developer explained what interactive shelves meant. Here we see several images of carts and farmers markets with empty shelves. In his description, I took it to mean that we'll get something very similar to the visual effects we now have on the current release of Hofbergman at the farm shop. As we deliver goods to these stands and the farmers market, the produce and other products that we drop off will appear in the baskets, boxes, and shelves. And it's possible that the products will disappear over time as if people are buying the items from the stands or off the shelves at the farmers market. And then another really cool detail I want to point out in this shot is that we've got a custom mailbox off in the distance, a little tractor. During the FarmCon map presentation, we learned that there would be small productions in addition to new productions and viable farmhouses. In a video I will show later, we will see a structure similar to this by the sawmill. Given the items in this building, I have to assume that this is a small sawmill type of production. In this next image, I'm still at a loss as to what this might be. We have to the right what looks like a wrapping machine, and then maybe something to heat up the wrap and make it tight. Maybe this is some sort of sorting facility for rice, grapes, or olives. I really don't know. The next image I feel is going to be a small placeable milling machine for flour. And then I think what we have here in the last image is a finished buildable farmhouse. The farmhouses we build are supposed to be functional and not just visual, so that means a sleep trigger, and by the windows maybe also an interior. The described gameplay will involve you buying a slab or a basic foundation and placing that down. There might be different houses or houses with different building requirements that will cost different amounts based on how much needs to be delivered. There will also be construction sites, possibly like this one, where we can build playground equipment similar to the piano construction on Zelonka and the boat and roller coaster on Silver Run Forest. It was also heavily hinted that this would be a construction mission. Imagine bringing this building back to life as possibly a sell point, because it appears to be next to a railroad and waterway. Now, with respect to the PDA, I believe it's over here on the far eastern side of the map where these two railroads diverge. A few parting screenshots before we go and dive into some videos and really identify where they are on the PDA. We've got a few barns here, and during the presentation it was mentioned that there would be vintage areas, possibly like what we have here. The old wagon in the barn might be another construction mission. In our first video, we've got a barge or a dredge or something. We can see a big bridge here. We're going to quickly cut now to the other side of the bridge. We've got a big sell point off in the distance with a barge again. We've got several houses going up here, some of them up on stilts, I guess for flooding protection. We're going to see a lot of these sailboats, and I got to wonder, are we going to be able to ride these sailboats? From this point, we now move into the river. We kind of just took a different angle from the other house that we were just at. We've got another large structure over here, again, kind of up off of the way. And then way off in the distance, we've got our barge. Now we've taken back to the land. And here on the land, we're going to be making our way over to the barge landing. We're going to hang it right here at the road, and then again down into landing. We see a structure off to the left. That's that house that we saw earlier. We've got the barge, and then we can see we've got a nice hilly section, wooded section off in the distance. Now we've made our way back into the river. We have our barge, which we were just standing on. We're looking across the way now into the landing. And then as we're going to rotate our perspective around again, we're going to see the barge landing. We're going to see the building that we saw on the left, or now on to the right. A little bit further down the river, though, we've got this structure off in the distance. And then we're going to take this stream and make our way up to the stream. We've got a bridge over the stream. And then once we get to this bridge, we're going to rotate our pan around a little bit. And we're going to see we're going to have a long, straight road right in toward that round, big structure. We can see we have a field here. And then again, we're going to rotate, and then we saw that road. We're going to continue now up to this structure. Again, we're right here along the river's edge. You're going to see across the river, we've got what looks like a field. Then also beyond this structure, we also have what looks like a field. And then the last thing I want to point out is off in the distance, on the other side of the river, the other side of the field, we have a big, long structure. Now let me go and pull up the PDA and zoom in, and let me show you where I think all of these scenes were taking place from. It's my opinion, on the left, we see a crossing of the river. that is the big bridge that we saw at the beginning of this clip. So that barge, the dredge or whatever, was there parked alongside that roadway right before that bridge. Then the video jumped to the other side of that bridge where we're going to have a couple houses and structures, and then kind of move down along the riverside to the bottom of this turn before it started to turn back up to the north. And then we took to the road that then took us up to the barge area, and that barge road is where the road turns, that dirt road turns and makes its way up to the other paved road. And then we turned on that paved road down into the barge landing. And that's where we have those two lighter colored structures. And then the barge, I believe, is going to go across the river there and basically connect the road to the north and the road to the south, just to the west of this treed and hilly area, which are going to come up in another video, and we're going to be able to see the barge from the top of that hill. Then we progressed on the river, further up the river, to this little stream that shot off the left from the river. And we went up that stream. Remember that we had that little bridge across the stream? We had the field on the other side of that bridge. Well, that's right there where we have the bridge and the river crossing. Then we turned to the right and we saw a long road stretch to that big round building. And that's where we have that big round building right there at that cell point, right before the river goes and makes another bend to the south. We looked, we saw off in the distance, we saw some fields, and then we saw across the river some trees and some fields, and then we saw a big long building, and that's the big long building there south of what looks like field 16. And then the second video that was provided to us, we're walking up that hilly area that was on the other side of the barge landing, because when we get up here to a little bit of a clearing, the camera's going to pan to the left, and if you look off down, you can see the river, and you can just barely make out some of the structures by the ferry landing, including the ferry itself. So right here, if we look off in the distance, we can see the ferry, we can see the ferry landing, and we can see that house that's right there along the river, as well as several other structures there along the river's edge. And if we pan to the left a little bit, we can see that big concrete bridge and that big cell point where we had the barge in that video clip. Now the video is going to continue and take us up along this trail path, and eventually we're going to land on a dirt road. And that dirt road is then going to turn and meander up to a clearing where we're going to see a field, and we're going to see a big, large observation tower up on the top of the hill. Now, with respect to the PDA, where was all this taken? Well, it was basically right across the river from our ferry landing in this treed area where we have the dirt road. We've got that field out in the clearing up on top of the hill, and then we can see a little square that is going to be the observation tower. Now, do notice kind of over to the right, we do see our farmhouse for what I believe is going to be our second farm. Now we're going to make our way into town, the main town area. To our left we have Central Cafe. Behind that we have the fuel station. Off in the distance, we can see what I'm believing is going to be our vehicle dealer. Right there with the green doors. And then we've got this big structure with these silos. And this is the other side of that structure we saw right at the end of the very first video clip. Remember, that was a production point and then was right along the railroad track. Now, another key point of interest here is going to be this big bridge that we see just on the other side of this empty building. So that is going to be a landmark that we're going to look for when we do get over to the PDA. And then just across the street, we have our animal dealer. Now, something else I want to point out is we've got a really big structure off in the distance. I want to point that out to you when we look at the PDA. Driving over here to our animal dealer, we're going to see pigs kind of right up front over here to the left. We can see them there laying in the pen. And then as we make our way across the other side of this big building, I want to point out some of the ground textures we've got, the varied ground textures. Really does look like it's kind of rough and kind of disheveled ground, if you will. We have cows here on the left, animated cows, not that static junk. We've got our river running here along the right. And then as we come around, we see this round barn off in the distance. Remember that one image that we had with the pre-FarmCon video? The one with the God rays? Yeah, that's it. We've got horses here to our right, sheep just up in front of us, and over to the left, what I think is ultimately going to be a manure buy point with some steam coming off. And if we pause right here, well, actually back a few frames. At any rate, we see that big round barn off in the distance. We see the big white farmhouse. Again, that is going to be this, just from a different angle. Right? Totally right. Completely nailed it. And now we're back to our video. We're going to be coming around to the other side of the animal dealer. We can see we've got a water tower off in the distance here. And then way off the distance, we once again have that big, long building. And then on the other side of the river, we're going to have that round building that we saw right at the end again of that first video clip. Also, as we come up here, we see a big silo complex directly in front of the tractor. And then over to the right, we've got that big structure that really has held me a little curious as to what it might actually be. So where is this town on the PDA? And this is why I say the PDA clearly isn't finished, because all of this area is green. It really probably shouldn't be green. But this is the town that we were just seeing. We've got our railroad coming up from the right and curving and coming across the top. Just north of that, we have a road. And then just north of that, we have that big structure. And that big structure we saw multiple times in this video clip. Just on the other side of that river, we're going to see that round structure that we talked about in the very first video. Just south of the railroad track, we have what I think is going to be our vehicle dealer, which is going to be that structure that kind of extends to the left and then down. And then we have that brown building, which is actually the white empty building in the video. We can see the bridge going across the river. That was that bridge that I pointed out in the video. And then we made our way over under the awning, or under the top of the fuel station. And then we turned left and made our way across the road down by the animal dealer. And that is that big structure there just south of the road. And then we have a road kind of meandering around that. We went around that road because remember we had the river off to the right. And that is where we saw the cows, we saw the horses, we saw the sheep. And where we saw the sheep, we also saw that manure heap. And then just across the way, we talked about that round barn, the farmhouse. Well, that is the second farm that we talked about earlier on. And then we continued up and around, and then we can see off directly in front of us that silo complex that is over there by the railroad tracks. And then, as I mentioned, we've got that big structure. And that's over here, right here to the left, just below, or right over here to the right, just below the silo structures. That is the building I really want to know more about. This video clip is going to walk us through several different areas. We've got that small placeable mill that I mentioned, and then off in the distance we see what is probably going to be a construction mission for a sell point. We've got the railroad tracks that are splitting off into two tracks. We're coming down the hill. We have what I believe is going to be a lime buy point. It's typically what that structure does. And then here we have what looks like a sell point or a loading point to load material onto a barge right by the river. We can see across the river that big structure there as well, right on the other side of the riverbank. So there we have the barge loading area, and again, right across the river, we've got that barge structure. So let's go ahead and see where this might be on the PDA. So we've now made our way all the way to the far east of the map, and we can see the railroad coming across the river. We can see the railroad going across the road and then splitting. Just above that split, we have what I think is going to be that construction mission, and then just below that split, we have a road that's coming down to the south. And that is the road that was turning and going down the hill. We've got the fill icon for that possible lime buy station. We have the sell icon, which is going to be for that barge loading area, because we can then see across the river, we've got that big, large structure that we saw across the river. And then once again, that is also going to be some sort of production point based on the icon. Then the video does a little bit of a jump cut. We've got this structure here, which I said kind of looks like that small structure that I said may be small production sawmill. And then we have the sawmill itself. This big structure here on the right, I believe it would be an ideal structure for you to load wood chips into, but I don't think it's quite yet built out, because ideally there should be some sort of conveyor mechanism that is connecting over to the actual sawmill. I believe this is where our pallets are going to spawn for our various sawmill products. That would be a decent guess for me. And then we're going to come down the hill a little bit into our actual sawmill. And that's where we're also going to find the mechanism that would be ultimately loading logs up from the log pond. Hopefully we're going to have some really nice animations here with respect to the sawmill. That was something I really felt was missing in FS22 with respect to its productions, was the overall lack of animations. A quick little jump across this little creek, and then we have the log pond. We've got that little boat that we've already seen in a still shot. We've got the train bridge coming across the water there, and we've got our logs. Now, this is something that's really interesting, because if we pause right here and then look off into the distance, we can see what looks like, once again, that construction mission with the rundown building. That's really going to help us confirm our believed location of this sawmill. And then back to the video, another really interesting point is something I want to pause on right here. What is this? Well, I think it's a tunnel. And I think it's a waterway. And when we get to the PDA, I'm going to explain, but I think it's a waterway that's going to connect over to another segment of the river and kind of seriously cut off a lot of river travel time. It's quite possible that we're going to be able to float logs down the river. Or, quite possible, we're going to be able to use that little tugboat, that little boat back there in the log pond, to pull boats or pull logs down the river and then through a tunnel and come out over here, right here at the sawmill. Let me go explain why I think this. So if you remember early on in the video, I said this area just south of the river bending to the north and where the train crossing came and bend and went along the river, I thought that was where the log pond was, and I thought that's where the sawmill was. Well, if we look directly to the east, we can see that big building structure, which we're pretty confident is going to be that construction mission with, again, that rundown building. So that helps land that area right here, kind of just left of center of the screen, is indeed going to be the sawmill. And then what we also see is we see this kind of waterway going off to the left and then ending right here at the road. That was that thing that we stopped off right at the end of the video. The tunnel. Where does that tunnel come out? Well, let me show you. Now we scrolled over the PDA a little bit to the west and we have our barge landing. Directly above the barge landing, we have a little bit of an inlet from the river. And that is exactly where I think the other side of that tunnel is going to come out. So if that is indeed the case, we're going to be able to bypass a significant chunk of the river as it winds its way up north and then turns and makes its way back down south. Wouldn't that be an interesting little Easter egg for Giants to have put in? The ability to Suez Canal, if you will, a tunnel under a decent part of the map in order for you to transport logs from one point of the map to another. Now we're almost done, and this took a little bit of time to figure out. But first off, Giants, you need to rotate your mailbox around. At any rate, this is where we're going to be able to possibly deliver materials and logs, lumber, in order for this guy to produce cool little wooden structures. Playground equipment, we're going to see a fish, we're going to see a boat, we're going to see like a tractor here in a little bit, but this was a really, really interesting area to land. I still don't know what's up with the poles. Maybe that'll be disclosed in some sort of dev blog later on or some sort of fact sheet. Something else I really liked is I like this tire with the concrete, and then we've got the little birdhouse thank you thing. That just really reminded me growing up. I would see that a lot. I would see kind of poles in the concrete and a tire, and then that would be kind of a makeshift pole in order to hold up volleyball nets or things like that. But here we have kind of a tractor. We've got a little wagon. Obviously this is intended for playground equipment or for kids. We've got a nice interior structure going on here. And this structure also has a basement. And I really like seeing Giants build out buildings with interiors because this is going to allow modders to take this structure and do lots of other things with it during the life of Farm Sim 25 and really whatever comes thereafter. Back outside, we've got an interesting other set of playground equipment here. We've got kind of a seesaw that looks like a big wooden two-man saw. We've got the farmhouse. Over here in this fenced area, we can see we've got some sort of wooden fish. Then we're going to go down the road and around the bend. Remember all of these directions because it's going to be key in order to basically land this area on the map. We've got a small barn here, and then we have this wooden boat playground equipment. And then we're going to continue to make our way around to the right. Again, I don't know what's up with the poles. And then down here, we've got kind of a little tractor area. We've got a main road. We've got a bridge. And then off on the other side of that bridge, we have what appears to be some sort of round structure. Okay, and we can see this road is fairly long and straight. Let's go land it on the PDA. So this structure is in the extreme southwest portion of the map. Up here we can see where a road comes and splits. We've got the road going off to the right, down, around, it goes over a little creek, comes around, and then joins this big long road running the entire stretch of the map to the south. And then back up to where this road splits off. Splits off to the left, and then makes a little bit of turn and comes up. Well, it's coming up an incline, and that is where that building is. That's where the building is that has that playground equipment. It's got that fenced area. And then we came around. Remember, we came around the road. We had that barn. So then we have that little square structure there. And then we made a right turn, and we came down to the road itself. We had a little bit of a shed, a little bit of an awning there at the roadside. And then across the road, across the river and the bridge, we can see that little round structure. We've got a little round structure also indicated on the PDA. Now this long road, this is the same road that was shown in the pre-FarmCon video with respect to showing the tractor and showing the reflections off the side of the tractor. So that kind of just lands everything for you as far as where it was on the map. And now the last video I want to share with you is one that really goes through this buildable structure, this likely construction mission. We've seen this structure several times. We know exactly where it is on the PD at this point, so we don't really need to analyze that. We've got another one of those interesting thank you poles. Just noticed that. That's interesting. And then over here to the left, we're going to see a little paper boat or a paper hat in a window. I'm nearly 100% sure that is going to be a collectible because we've seen one of those exact same things in another screenshot. So yeah, collectible, I'm pretty sure. I like this building. I like that we can go inside of it, and it really makes me wonder what this building might possibly look like once it is completely renovated and restored. Makes me wonder what possible uses might this structure have. And now we jump over to another area, and this I believe is going to be the third possible player farm, because we do have a farmhouse located on this particular property. In fact, we can see the farmhouse over there to the right. Let me go and pull up the PDA real quick, and I'll show you why I think this is that area. So let's look at the PDA, and this is the area pretty much right center on the screen. We've got a building that has a long, narrow kind of extension going off to the right. We've got that farmhouse up to the north of that. And then we have what looks like a little round structure just to the east of that long extension that's coming off to the right. Well, let's go back and rewind this video and show it to you again. What you're going to see is we're going to come across this building to the south. And as we make our way around the eastern side of that building, we're going to see a little small round structure. Key to that here on the PDA. And then we see that farmhouse up on the hill. Again, keen-eyed to that PDA. Then we've got some other farm buildings, some kind of long structures, again, that are just past this particular barn. So back to that video. We've got the little narrow part of the building. We've got that long section that extends off to the right. We can see a little round structure there behind that building. And then we have the farmhouse up on the hill. So again, that's why I think I pretty much have landed where this area is on the map. And then as the video continues, we can see some more barns off in the distance. Now we're back to our brick structure that again is straddling the river. And again, I'm going to show you where I believe this is going to be on the PDA. And then we're going to be able to come back and pretty much confirm that with how all of these other structures are working with respect to the overall layout of the video. So this structure is over here to the east. We can see off to the west, that is the town area that we've already kind of located and figured out where that is. And then directly to the east of that, we have that structure that again is straddling the river. We've got the road that crosses just in front of that. And then we have that construction icon, and that's going to be key to that building that is just south of the road, just south of that building that again is crossing the river. We're also going to need to pay attention a little bit to the road structure here, because the video is going to take us up and around the north side of this building. We're we're going to see kind of the waterway, creek coming down into the building. Then we're going to see a pond. And then off in the distance, where we're going to see some more of these structures that are, again, kind of key to this PDA. We're going to make our way back around the building and then down to the road, and we can really line up a lot of the way the road structures are also working with respect to this area on the PDA. So that is going to do it for the night. That's going to do it for this video. This is our deep dive into Riverbend Springs and where we think things are that have already been announced and already been shown are on the map with respect to the PDA that has been released as of FarmCon 2024. I'd love to know your thoughts down in the comments below. Did I hit? Did I miss? What do you think of the map itself? What do you think of the locations that we have been able to identify? And I, for one, am very much looking forward to seeing this map as a finished product. Quite frankly, I'm looking forward to seeing the East Asian map as well, because if it looks anywhere as close to how this does on this trailer, I'm going to be very impressed as well. Again, if you are not a subscriber to the channel, please go ahead and click that subscribe button. Tick that notification bell also, because there is going to be a whole lot more of Farming Simulator 25 news between now and release on November 12th. If you are a PC player and maybe you're looking to pre-order the game, then do consider using my affiliate link with Giants down in the description. That is going to get you an eShop electrical copy. Maybe you want to buy the collector's edition, and if so, well, then I've got an affiliate link again with Amazon this time, once again down in the description below. Maybe you're a console player and you want to join the channel, or you want to help out the channel. Well, if you want to get a physical copy of the game for Xbox or PlayStation, then once again you can use that collector's edition Amazon link and select either PlayStation 5 or Xbox X or S. And until next time, happy farming!